Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Chop It Up with your girl Lebene Mawutor, and today we have a very special episode. We're going to be talking about something that is really important to Canadian musicians, and that is the JUNOs. So today we're joined with Arlo Maverick. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm taking it day by day. So Arlo is a hip hop artist, a community organizer, and also a filmmaker and a jack of all trades. And he's also wearing another hat as the chair of the Rap Advisory Committee for the JUNOs.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Close. Okay. So each year this committee has different people apply for it, and we want to really break down today, especially for the rap category, for people who may have questions, maybe they've never applied, but they want to know how they can apply. So we're going to start a little bit light with a little bit about you, and then we're going to dig more into that conversation.
Yeah, let's chop it up.
Yes, that's the name of the show. So we want to know, what was like your earliest moments with music?
Wow. My earliest moments with music would just be probably dancing to music or trying to rap along with music with my cousins. As my older cousin, he kind of introduced us to the world of music, but we always had music playing around the house, went to church, so that's there. Plus, just my, the elders in the house, the records they would play. Yeah, so music was always around.
So when did you decide, like what kind of age did you decide, hey, I want to do this? And what were some artists that were your inspiration for wanting to get into the game? Okay,
probably my biggest inspiration is locally. There was a girl by the name of Debbie Carpenter, and I always would just freestyle, but I never knew how to actually like write a rhyme, you know? And so one day we're in the back of church and she's literally writing a rhyme called Straight Up from the Ice Age. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing somebody write a rap in real life, you know? And so seeing her go through the whole thought process of writing down ideas and like kind of just mumble things in her head, and then she's crossing things out and then reciting the lyrics. And she had a few people around her as well too, who were just like listening to it and kind of just like letting her know like, yo, that's dope still. That's essentially what made me say, I want to do this, because now I understood how it can be done. Before I was listening to it and just saying gibberish, but that was the moment. And that same day I went home and wrote a rhyme which was called Straight Up from the Ice Age as well too. So.
Wow. So how long have you been doing music so far?
Wow. That's many years.
Many years.
But probably since the age of like 8 or 9.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been a journey, and it's been cool to see the evolution of, I think that one thing that as artists we don't really think about is that our trajectory and our evolution within music is happening at the same time that so many other things are happening around us, right? Within the genres that we create in. And so much of our lives become these time capsules where it's just like, you remember the first show that you had, and that show being on stage, like the clothes people were wearing, the music people were listening to, the what was going on in the world at that time. So it's just like, for me, there's a lot of these snapshots that have taken place throughout my journey in music that allowed me to kind of like go back to a certain era because of the fact that like, just realizing that there's a parallel world happening locally and internationally as it relates to music. And just like with my journey, much like your journey as well too, right? So
we know you carry Edmonton on your back, on your neck, every day, all day, YEG. Number one, why is that? And how has that journey been carrying Edmonton? Because it's a lot to carry. Because even, I was telling Josh, our cameraman, I was like, he's basically like, I didn't say Drake of Edmonton, but I said like, I would on that level. Like if you're talking about somebody who's like well known and you can Google him, you'll see it. So yeah.
Well, I will say this. I think that all of us should be the Drakes of our cities. I think that what Drake has done for Toronto, which is a city I was born in, but I was raised out here. Toronto is a special place. Toronto is a beautiful city with so much culture. And the world was somewhat privy to it, but at the same time, though, the world also looked at Canada as just being us living in igloos, right? But the stardom, the impact that Drake had on music, and also bringing people into his city for them to understand what Toronto was, because some people would know about Caribana and some people didn't know about Caribana. But the moment that Drake exploded, his profile allowed for people to realize that there was a special city called Toronto. And I'm hoping that artists like myself, artists like Moraine, artists like Arden, artists like Forever Friday, artists like Kripo, and every other artist out there is able to raise the profile of Edmonton to the point that people are now saying, I want to go to Edmonton, you know, because people say like, I want to go to Toronto. I was in Singapore last year, and there was an artist who was from, if I'm not mistaken, I'm almost certain he was from Korea. And he was talking about how the Toronto sound influenced him. And I'm just like, this is crazy, because at one point in time, Toronto was not that, right? And hopefully we get to the point where people are saying that the Edmonton sound inspired them. And so for me, one of the biggest things is that growing up, Edmonton was home, but so many people like who are from here wanted to leave. And I seen so many people who were talented not have resources, not have outlets, not have a support, not have an ecosystem. And in order for them to pursue their dreams, they had to go to other cities. So my whole thing is that if I could create something here that would make people proud of Edmonton, and it's not just me, there's so many people who are doing it as well too, but if myself and other people could create something that people felt that they could be proud of and not be like, oh man, I'm from Edmonton, but I don't want people to know, you know? Like, that's always been the biggest goal, because I know what the city has to offer. I know the talents we have here. I know how beautiful the city is. Like, we're a blue collar working city that a lot of people say is dirty or grimy, but it's just like, there's a beauty in everything that we have here. So I want the world to know about that.
Yeah, that is truly beautiful. Stand up for Edmonton. Okay, so if we were to look at your playlist,
yes,
what, like maybe in the last few days, what is a song and the artist that has been on repeat for you and why? Okay,
wow. Okay, so there's been actually two artists. I've been really digging the new Chance the Rapper album. Chance is someone who just makes great music. The last album was very sketchy and didn't live up to expectations, but this latest album is like amazing. And then the latest one from Moto, Hello Moto. He's got songs like Pretty Privilege on there. He's got songs like Problems, songs that just like really just like tell his story, but at the same time tell our story, because it's made in Edmonton, produced by Edmonton. And so, so those are the two albums that I've been really just rinsing. Yeah, so you've been in so many spaces, whether it's Edmonton or Canada-wide. What is a fun fact about you that most people wouldn't know, or they would be surprised to know about you? Wow, a fun fact. Lebene put me on the spot. Well, some people know, some people don't know this, but Sir Alexander Bustamante, who was the first prime minister of Jamaica, is actually someone who I'm related to. You know, I don't get any special privileges when I go to Jamaica, though. People aren't there was signs saying Arlo Maverick. You know, like but it's one of those things where it's cool to have that lineage, and being aware of it is one of those things that pushes me to make sure that I leave a legacy behind, because it's like. I want my name to be something that is recognized for having an impact on the world, you know, in much like he was able to have. Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, maybe you can, now that you say it, maybe there'll be signs at the airport for you when you land in Jamaica. Hopefully. I want to be treated like Bob Marley. I mean, yeah. So you've worn many hats, from MC to filmmaker to community organizer, all of it. Yeah. What drives you to keep giving back? A lot of that just comes from, well, it comes from two things. The family that I come from, who are always willing to help, sometimes to their own detriment. But if they see that someone is in need, they will help. And that's something that I've just seen from the time that I was young, from my mom to my dad to my grandmother to various people in my family. Like, I feel like, and this might be me bigging up Jamaicans too much, but I think Jamaicans just have that spirit of like always wanting to like help and see good happen, you know? And the second reason I think is because of the fact that while not everybody was willing to help me on my journey, a lot of people were. And those people who helped out in significant ways. People like Kata Pinnock, who allowed me to understand that the music industry was an industry and a business, but also taught me so much about song creation. And had he not come in when I was younger, I connected with him through through his cousin Fabian, and we were in a group together. And that allowed me to understand grants and so much of the music industry that most people weren't privy to, and some people never become privy to that. But yeah, people like him, people like Don Joyce, people like Debbie Carpenter, and just that whole family. Yeah, and I think that there's been so many people who have helped me along the way that had I not had them, I don't know if I would have been able to accomplish the things that I was able to accomplish. Because even someone who I never mentioned, but I need to mention is a guy by the name of Daryl Broderick. He used to let me go into his basement when he wasn't there and allow me to record like my little mixtapes that I would share with people, and people be like, yo, like, you're able to record? And like, he didn't charge me anything. He saw that I was someone who had talent and potential, and was just like, yeah, just go through. So yeah, so reason why I have to give back is it's in me, but at the same time though, I also want to pay it forward, because there's so many great opportunities that I would have never had there not been someone else looking out for me.
That's true. Like, you've had people to support you along the way. It wasn't just something you did on your own.
No, like, I'm not an island, right? And so for me, it's like, yeah, if more of us thought like that, I think that the ecosystem we have here, not just in Edmonton, but in Canada, would be very different, you know? The mentality of not wanting to help can bite us, because you don't know who somebody is, and you don't know who somebody could be. And I often use this analogy where I talk about going through this house. And so let's say we all are in a house and we're all given these keys, right? And we're like, okay, guys, we're gonna stick together. But then one of us has the mentality of like, the moment I can get into a door that no one else has a key for, I'm gonna lock them out. So we're all going through the house. And the person gets through and they lock the door. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, cool. I don't need those people. I'm gonna do this, because they want to get it on their own.
Yeah.
They eventually get to a door, and the key that they need is with you and I. And now they're stuck because they thought about themselves and didn't think about like, let me just be a good person, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate not everybody's like that, but you know, we keep moving. So right now you're the chair of the Rap Advisory Music Committee for the JUNOs. Now, huge congratulations, because that's big, that's huge. And for our Americans watching, JUNOs is like our Grammys, basically. So that's how big it is. How did you even get to this point? And have you been on this committee like a little bit before? Yeah. So how did you get to the point to chair? Yeah.
So I was on the committee. I got to give a shout out to Annalie Bonda, who's a Filipina, who's from Edmonton, which is crazy because last year she was my co-chair. So we essentially had the chair and the co-chair of the JUNOs Rap Music Advisory Committee, who were both Edmontonians. She's lived in Toronto for the last like 20 years or so, but she's been integral to the Toronto music scene and the Canadian music scene. But she was the one who approached me and said, hey, like, I really think that with the work that you do in the community, I think that you would be perfect for this role of being in the chair. And so stepped in, and it's been fascinating because like I learned a lot being a committee member, but I've learned so much more being in the chair position. And things like this, I hope, will help inspire more people from Edmonton to realize that when we do the work, things can happen. Because what most people don't realize is that people from Edmonton, I should say, have had an impact on the national music scene for years. But we often look at ourselves in the sense of, we're from Edmonton, what can we do, right? But me being on this committee, I'm now able to connect so many people from the city with the national music scene, but I'm also able to learn more about the music industry and bring that back to the community and be like, okay, these are some things that you should be aware of, right? But as I mentioned before, though, we have people who have really made an impact on Canadian hip hop or just Canadian music as a whole. David Cliff Cox, Daryl Rodway, Anna Lee, as I mentioned there. And there's Tanika Charles. There's so many people who have come from this city and have impacted Canada in a major way. And so the more of us who are understanding the business side of it, the more we can actually support the artists, because in essence, the music industry starts with the IP of an artist, right?
Yeah.
That intellectual property then creates podcasts. It creates albums. It creates jobs for engineers. It creates jobs for camera people, so on and so forth. But we have to find ways to nurture and develop that IP, so then that way we create an ecosystem around it that allows all of us to eat, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. So let's get into the nitty gritty. So what is the eligibility criteria for the JUNOS rap categories?
Okay, so with the eligibility, you had to have released your album within a certain time frame. So what happens every year is that there is an overlap period that takes place between September 1st and November 1st, right? So for this year, anybody who released anything from 2024, September 2024, the 1st to November 2025 this year, they are eligible to submit an application, right? But if you release something this year, so September 1st, 2025 to November 1st, 2025, you could apply next year, right? So that overlap period is good in the sense that if you apply and you don't get selected, you have another chance next year, right? But if it's outside of that time period, you could only do it for that year. So there's eligibility in terms of the time period when it was released. You also have eligibility as it relates to the genre itself, because with hip hop, there's so much melody that's in it now, right? And so sometimes we'll be in a situation where we have our screening meetings where we go through all the music that was sent in and listen to it to determine whether or not it is hip hop or not, right? So it might be a situation where there's someone who is singing and we're just like, it needs to be 50% rapping and it has to be 50% by a Canadian, right? Because we've had situations in the past where an American rapper will basically rap over a Canadian producer's beat and then get the nomination. And that takes away from a deserving Canadian hip hop artist who's actually rapping. And that's what we're trying to reward, the best rapper, you know?
Okay. So once an artist submits, how does the adjudication process? I'm just happy I got that word today. How does the adjudication process work? Can you walk us through that?
Okay. So albums are adjudicated based off of two things. We have consumption, which is 50% of it. And then we also have judges who are basically tasked with listening to all the music, and then they'll select the albums or the singles based off the category you submit for. They'll select which ones they feel should be nominees. That's their vote, right? With that, the CARIS, which is the governing body for the JUNOs, they have a company that then looks at the streams of it. So consumption is basically streaming, YouTube plays, so on and so forth, right? That will be tabulated along with the votes of the judges, and then 5 nominees will be selected. From those 5 nominees, then it gets to the point of it being open to delegates from CARIS, right? So if you're a CARIS delegate, you get the ability to vote or abstain. If it's a category you're not familiar with, you're encouraged to abstain, so then that way you're not impacting the category in a negative way.
So how are the judges chosen, and what makes this committee diverse?
Okay, so the judges are chosen through suggestions that we make as a committee, right? Our committee contains people from all across Canada. We have relationships with different people in the music industry, and so we're basically tasked with putting together a minimum each year of 10 judges, right? Some of those judges will be picked, but we also have judge suggestions that we've had from previous years. So then what CARIS will do is that they'll basically go into they'll ensure there's no conflicts of interest with the judges. They'll contact the judges and kind of go through what is required of them. And then they'll basically select judges that were not made aware of who the judges are in order to keep confidentiality, right? Those judges will then be sent links to the music, and then they'll go through the applications and adjudicate that way.
Okay, so for artists who are on the fence, maybe they've never submitted before or they've thought about it, what advice would you give them to encourage them to apply even if they're hesitant to?
Well, I always say that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, one of them said it, I'm not sure. But the biggest thing is that you are looking at an investment into your career, right? if I'm not mistaken, it's roughly $75 for non-CARES delegates, and $55, and that's during the early bird time period. Now, the thing that's important, and one of the reasons why you should submit is if you put the time into making this great album, this great body of work, and you've worked it in a sense of getting onto playlists, getting onto radio, getting reviews, touring it, so on and so forth, then having that acknowledgement from Canada's like largest and biggest like award association is something then you could add to your resume, add to your CV that can help you leverage grant funding, tours, sponsorship, so on and so forth, right? But the biggest thing is that you have the ability to have your music listened to by various people within the music industry, right? So at the screening level, we're listening to all the submissions that come through. So there's been times where we've had a screening submission where someone will hear something and be like, yo, I wasn't aware of this artist, who is this artist? And then that creates an opportunity. There was an artist from Calgary who ended up getting managed by one of the people who was listening on the committee many years ago, you know? So that's something where had that artist not submitted, they would have never been able to hook up with their manager, right? There's also the whole fact of like, when you're submitting, you're also allowing the judges to be aware of who you are. And again, the judges are people who are within the music industry. They could be anything from a DJ, producer, someone who are a podcaster, whatever the case may be, right? Now you're on their radar, right? And so, yes, getting a nomination is great, but at the same time though, and I said to somebody yesterday that imagine being able to pay $75 to have someone from TDE listen to your album at least once, or listen to your song at least once, right? And that's just one person, right? We have 10 judges, then we have 10 people who are on the committee who are listening to this music. So the ability for your music to be heard by key people in the music industry is crucial. But then let's say you get the nomination. If you get the nomination, every time the nominees are announced, your name is announced, right? There's an artist from the city here, Skystar, who I worked with last year, and he was able to secure a JUNO nomination, and he had billboards around the city with his name, where that created a legitimacy that may have not been there before, because people saw him as like, yeah, he's a good artist. But then you have the JUNOs putting you on a billboard, people look at you in a different light, you know? And so there's a lot of opportunities that can come from that, especially if you're smart about leveraging that opportunity. Like I always say to artists, like the moment that you get word that you are a nominee, contact media, get your fans to get behind you. Maybe you're creating like a road to the JUNOS thing where it's just like, hey, like I want you guys to all like help me pick out my outfit that I'm wearing for this, like really engage your fan base, because this is a huge opportunity, you know? And while you're there, get the content that you need to get, you know? And even if you don't get the nomination, like it's still good for artists to attend the JUNOS and things of this nature, because if the whole industry is there, why are you not there, you know? In Edmonton, the JUNOS were held here back in 2023, and it was an amazing year. Cool things were happening because the pandemic had just officially ended. Hip hop was celebrating 50 years. And so Mel Boogie, who was the former chair for the JUNO Draft Advisory Committee, also a legendary Canadian hip hop DJ, dropping dimes, and Maestro's little sister, she held the first ever Black Music Brunch the year before in Toronto. And so when it came to Edmonton, I was tasked with helping put together this event. And it was a celebration of like Black music culture, like, and it wasn't just Black people there, it was everybody there, right? But we were celebrating Black music culture. And like, the great thing about that is that we had multiple generations of Canadian Black music in one room, with industry, artists, so on and so forth. But the great thing about that is that people were connecting, right? And it was sponsored by Ciroc and everything like that. So it was free food, free, like some alcohol was free, not all of it, right? But it was a cool thing that allowed for people to come together and just like, they were able to celebrate Edmonton, but we were able to celebrate the culture of music in this city and really connect people. So I mentioned that because of the fact that if you're attending the JUNOS, then you can't just make it about the award. You can't just make it about possibly doing Juno Fest, which is a showcase for artists to perform during the Junos. You have to make it about building relationships and meeting people and really making an impression, you know?
So what are some misconceptions about the nomination process or even the process of applying that you would like to clear up?
Wow.
If there are any.
I can't think of any misconceptions people have. I just think that a lot of times people are just like, well, they're worried about the judges. They're worried about, do I have consumption? They're worried about like, is this, why should I do this, right? And at the end of the day, like, this is something that's open doors for a lot of people, right? And you never know what's gonna happen, right? We as artists spend a lot of money on things that are not going to advance our career, right? But if you're able to spend, again, $75 if you get it in prior to October 3rd, that in itself is an investment, a marketing expense that you could look into it, you could see it as. And with that, again, you have 10 committee members who are now being exposed to your music. You have 10 judges who are being exposed to your music. If you end up getting the nomination, that ends up changing everything. And another thing too that you have to keep in mind is that like, this can also be a call to action for you, for your fans, right? In the sense of, one of the things I encourage a lot of artists to do is create a post that basically says submitted for consideration, right? It's something I saw like years back with the Grammys where they have these whole submitted for consideration thing. And I'm just like, yo, like, why are we not doing that, right? So I encourage artists to do that because the moment your fans see that, okay, like you're submitting for the Junos, it now puts a battery in their back in the sense of, we want to see you succeed, right? We see you're doing the stuff that's needed, because sometimes your fans are looking at you from the standpoint of you're a hobbyist because you're just doing the stuff that is easy, right? But when you're putting yourself in those situations where you can fail, but you're believing in yourself enough to do that, then people tend to rally behind you more because it's like there's skin in the game, right? So I would recommend artists submitting. I've submitted myself in previous years. I don't have a release that is eligible for it, but it's one of those things where if you do have a release that's eligible, apply, right? And here's the thing, put yourself in a position that allows for your nomination to make sense. And what I mean by that is work your album, like apply for funding that allows you to market your album, connect with other artists and people who understand how to market and promote music and understand social media strategies, so then that way your music can reach as many people as possible. And when it reaches those people, that will hopefully create the ripple effects that get you on the radar of somebody else, right? Another thing we have to keep in mind as well too is that if you're an artist, the Junos aren't the only awards that you should be submitting to. There's a Western Canadian Music Awards, right? Which has a category for everything except for reggae. Reggae is coming soon, hopefully. There's the YYC Music Awards, right? There's the Sask Music Awards. There's like all these different things. There's the East Coast Music Awards, and having these things essentially on your CV or in your resume or your bio helps, because now if I'm a person who's listening to the music and I'm adjudicating it, then I'm listening to the music, it's like, yo, this is really dope still. Then I'm also looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, cool, they're making great music, but what are they doing to promote their careers? As I go to the bio, if I see WCMA nomination, if I see done this tour, open up for this artist, was added to this playlist, whatever the case may be, now it gives me more reason to be like, you know what, I want to see this artist succeed. I'm going to vote for them, right? So it's a mixture of both. It's one thing that as artists, we sometimes make the mistake of, is that we focus so much on the art and then we forget the business side of things.
Okay, so now that we know all about how to apply, we need to know where to apply, and then the important dates that you mentioned as well.
Okay, yes. So in regards to some important deadlines for people to be mindful of is that early bird deadline is October 3rd, 2025 at 11:59 Pacific Standard Time. And then we have final submission deadline November 6th, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. And then this other stuff I can't really reveal.
Yeah, no problem.
But nominee announcements will be made roughly around the end of January.
Okay.
And then, JUNOS will be taking place in Hamilton this year, March 26th to March 29th. And then
2026.
2026,
Okay,
yes, 2026. And if anybody's ever been to Hamilton, they know that it's like Edmonton.
Oh, really?
Yeah, blue collar working class city, very much like Edmonton, and great art scene out there.
Okay, so if you could leave, well, there's a lot of advice you could give to Canadian hip hop artists, but for anybody who wants to enter this space, especially as a Canadian hip hop artist, maybe they've been doing their own thing and they haven't come to this extent, but they see this or they see like the sign up for it and they're interested. What advice would you give them for stepping into these spaces?
Find a mentor. I'm very big on mentorship. I think that if somebody has already gone down the path that you've gone down, tap into them and ask them the questions, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. And if because what you'll typically find is that those people want to share this information, right? But they don't know who to share it with, right? But if you show the initiative of going up to an artist and be like, hey, I do this music thing and I'm just trying to figure out some things out. Do you mind listening to my music, or do you mind giving me some suggestions on what I should be doing? That plays a big role in a lot of artists leveling up, right? Utilize the people in your community who have made mistakes that can help you avoid making the same mistakes. Also tap into your music industry associations like Alberta Music, tap into things such as Advance, which is a great organization that helps Black artists in Canada, but just to go back to music industry associations, every province has what's called the MIA, Music Industry Association, and we have Alberta Music, there's Sask Music, there's BC Music, Manitoba Music, so on and so forth. And these are organizations that are advocates for the music industry. So whether you are an artist or a manager or a publicist or anything like that, these are organizations that provide resources, workshops, and also advice on how to navigate your career. So if you're an artist and you're not tapping into these things, then you're making a fatal mistake, because you're not going to have all the answers, but you can go to them. And if they don't have the answers, they can point you in the right direction. They also have newsletters that keep you up to date with festivals, grant deadlines, so on and so forth. So it's one of those things where you have to get involved in order for your career to level up. And so I would say two things is get a mentor, or find people that you could touch base with from time to time, but also get involved, be part of the ecosystem, make yourself visible, like attend shows, meet people, introduce yourself to everybody who's there, and that will help people get to know who you are. Because if I keep seeing the same face again and again, eventually I'm going to be like, who are you? Why are you here? Right? And not in a negative way, more in the sense of like, you obviously are taking this thing seriously. Who are you? How could I help you?
Yeah, for sure. So true. This has been such an amazing conversation. Are there any projects of yours that people should watch out for, like personally that you're working on, that you want to highlight today?
Wow. Working on a new album right now. It should be out 2026. It was supposed to be out this year, but everything happens when it's supposed to happen. More film stuff, more documentary stuff. I'm very big on documenting the history of Canadian hip hop, especially Edmonton, and hoping to do a lot more mentorship and artist development with some of the artists that are coming out of Edmonton and Calgary. So yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing with us the rap categories JUNO process, and congrats on being the chair. That's huge. Gotta put that on LinkedIn now.
It's on there.
It's on LinkedIn. Good, because I know I would. So this has been another episode of Chop It Up with your girl Lebene Mawutor. Make sure to stay bold, stay creative, and make sure to get your submissions in and subscribe, like, follow, so we can share more stories like this. Peace.
Truth is, if you don't see me around no more, I've been linking with CE.